All right, we are live.
What?
Thanks
No
everybody.
fancy intros?
Oh, I'm not that savvy. You could sing if you like to. We'll just sit here and listen to you sing.
No, you want a crowd, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So
We're gonna do something a little bit different today, everybody. We are gonna do this is my friend here, Snorelord, the Metalhead Viking Caveman trucker. He has a channel. Definitely check his channel out. And we were I don't remember how this kind of got started. A few months ago, we were both in a chat somewhere and people were talking about books, and I said, "Hey, here's a good book." And you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna check that out." And you checked it out, I know, and one of my drivers did. And you're like, "Hey, this is kind of a good book here." And for me, there's kind of I wouldn't normally necessarily do something like this, but throughout the course of your life, there's certain books that will I don't know if change your life is the right term. Is that what you would what you would say?
make an impact.
Make an impact, yes. And
Right.
this book, 1 Second After, is probably one of my top 5 impact books of all time.
I agree.
And
What are the
and
other
I
four?
think, who well, obviously, everybody's got this thing, but with the Bible is one.
Mhm.
Uh, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that might be number 2.
Yeah.
Probably Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover. The entire Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. And then I would say this one. That would
Well,
probably be, boy, that was off the top of my head. That would probably be like my top 5 right there.
mine, my only difference to that list would be because the Dave Ramsey thing kind of saved us a while back, and then the
Hmm.
Robert Kiyosaki book was good, but I would add Fahrenheit 451 to that because I read that
Oh,
in high school.
yes.
And if you look back, that book, they predicted everything that we see today, like the big
Yep.
large screen TVs and the
Well,
the interactive TV.
you could throw what's the Big Brother one in there?
1984.
1984. You could
Hmm.
throw that on the list. Uh, uh, any of the Napoleon Hill books, the Think and Grow Rich, that had an impact on me.
Yeah,
It's hard to come up with a top 5 sometimes, but you know it when you read it, don't you?
right. Yeah, but I remember Fahrenheit 451 as a kid, like a teenager, and and you look back, and I think I reread it not too long ago,
Hmm.
and like even earbuds, like
Yeah.
earbuds were predicted, and then kind of the
Alexa,
yep.
Alexa and Echo. I
Hmm.
mean, you could change the name of that book to Alexa, for crying out loud. I mean, or
Yep.
whatever those all those different machines are called that are in your house and listen to you and talk to you and tell you everything you need to know, right?
Yeah. And so I think I was doing a live feed, and Charles Anderson, he mentioned this book, and you had mentioned this book 1 second after, and you know before I was driving, I've always had obstructive sleep apnea, hence the nickname. And so it was hard for me to read a book because I would just fall asleep within the first chapter, right?
Yeah.
So books kind of went by the wayside, and then I became a driver, and then when the regulations kind of implemented, I got my CPAP machine, and what I realized is that I like reading. I used to like reading. Now I like reading again, and of course now being a truck driver, we went to audiobooks, and but since I've been home, I've been buying physical books. I've got like a whole stack. I've given Amazon a bunch of my money, right?
Hmm.
And this is the first fiction book that I've written or read in years, like
Well, let's
years.
talk about that for a second because it's one of the few fiction books you could be like, is this really fiction?
Right? It
I
doesn't feel
mean,
like fiction.
no, it feels like real life or potentially real life. Everybody, I'm putting a link in the chat here for an Amazon link to the audio book. You can click on that. You can get the audio book. You get the paperback book. You get whatever if you're interested. Just through the link up there. The link brings you to a book that costs $0. So there you go. Uh, so this book is by a man named William R. Forston. I did the audio book. I have two of them actually. I wore the first one out, got
Hmm.
scratched up, and the second one I got, it's read. I forget who it's read by, narrated by, but it's a really well done, well narrated audiobook.
Mm.
Of course, you want the unabridged version. This is a link I believe is to the unabridged version, and I would highly recommend you check this book out because it's likely to have a very strong impact on your life. And if it doesn't, I would I would probably be a little concerned about that.
Right.
It's going to open your eyes to a lot of things going on around you that you probably don't think of in your day to day life,
Hmm.
and it's to your benefit that you do. Uh, is it crazy conspiracy type stuff?
No.
On the outside, on the surface, it may look, but no, no, it's not. It's close. It might as well be nonfiction.
Hmm.
It's straight up reality, and I tell you, I can't recommend it enough.
It was written in 2000. Well, it came out in 2009, and the author uses real places,
Hmm.
real experiences, real,
Chances are you've been to most of these places
yep,
as a truck driver.
not real people, but he based his characters off of people he knew, and so it's very believable.
Yeah,
Like you just get,
the
yeah,
foreword for this book was written by Newt Gingrich.
right.
When this book came out, it was very popular, very well read, and very well respected in Congress.
Hmm.
They took note of this book and take it very seriously, and they actually took action, according to some of the things they wrote in this book about our national security, national interest, things like that. So, not very often does a book come along like that.
Right. Kind of back, remember in the 80s when um, the day after came out, and then threads came out over there in Europe about World War III, and
Hmm.
I remember they made a big deal after the day after. They had all these leaders from, these politicians from both Russia and America saying, "Yeah, this is horrible. We don't want this to happen." And it kind of raised an awareness of what nuclear war would be like. And this is different though. This is kind of the same impact, but in a different way.
Right.
And the fact that this book came out in 2009, which is kind of predates a lot of the prepper YouTube genre. YouTube was still new at that time, and when you read the foreword for the second book, they kind of like, wow, you kind of like a lot of these preppers are like, wow, you're spot on, and I was inspired by this book, and it made them think. So it's got that kind of impact. You can
Right.
almost say it kind of started, if not contributed, to the whole prepper movement. Where people started to pay attention on the what ifs, and that's what it does. Is it challenges you to think the what ifs. How many times you needed to know something, you just went to Google or YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, um,
And this the scenario or the premise for this book is not far fetched. It is not. Uh, it's very realistic. Okay. And
or
the
yeah,
so to kind of give the premise of the book, uh, one day out of the blue, uh, the United States is hit by an electromagnetic pulse from several nuclear weapons set off in the atmosphere from. They never really found out who did it because the country was totally disabled after that. But you say, okay, that's never going to happen. Well, guess what? The same thing can be done by our sun. And it has happened in the past, and it will happen again in the future through coronal mass ejections and sunspots.
hmm,
So this can be a natural phenomenon that caused this exact same scenario. So you don't even have to go down the conspiracy hole or the war or somebody out to get us. This can be done by a natural phenomenon that has happened before in the past. I think the last time it happened on any measurable event was called the Carrington event. What was that? Telegraphs were still popular. So what was that? 1897,
yeah,
somewhere
something
around there.
like that.
Somewhere around there. Uh,
What's
it,
the
and
name of
it
the channel you watch?
Suspicious observers.
Yeah, my wife watches a YouTube channel called Suspicious Observers, and he
Okay.
talks about impacts of the sun. He's kind of like the solar weather meteorologist. and how it impacts, earthquakes and weather and
Hmm.
electronic, you know, issues that you might have. It's a pretty interesting YouTube channel.
Okay, I'll have to check
So
that out.
yeah, suspicious observers.
Okay, so
But you don't even know what happens till towards the end of the book. You just know their
yeah,
power's out.
yeah, and we're not going to spoil it. We're not going to spoil the book here for you.
Yeah.
Um, we kind of want to. We'll give some things that happen in the book, but none of the details because I tell you what, this book will take you on a roller coaster ride.
Hmm.
Your
Yep.
emotions, you might find you're listening to this thing on audiobook, you might find yourself rolling down the road crying at certain points. And how do I know? Because I did. I cried like at certain points of this book, I cried like a damn baby. I ain't gonna lie. Like I had to pull over and get my feelings in order.
that's that's great. I was telling my friend Big Rig CO about this book, and about 4 days later he calls me and goes, he tells me "F you." I'm like, why? What did I do? He goes, man, I got into that first book, and man, now I'm finished with the whole series, and now I know why Steve doesn't want to leave his house anymore. And what's interesting is that my wife collects books,
Okay.
and we've always had this thought in the back of our minds, like, what if Google didn't exist? What if you need reference books? Like, remember in the old days, you go to your automotive store and they had the books
Haynes
on,
manuals and yeah.
yeah, the cars, and all that.
Yep.
It's like, we have books about plumbing, we have books about gardening, we have books about, native plants that are safe to eat. We have
Yep.
all this stuff, and she was collecting that
Yep.
before we started seeing the end of the world, as you might look at it.
Right.
Um, and
Because
there,
in relation to that,
uh
I kind of do the same thing. We get some old Amish books and stuff like that. But going back to the Fahrenheit 451 thing, right?
uh
With the books,
hmm
remember the books changed. Do you remember that part about Fahrenheit 451?
hmm
They would change books, and I've heard of that happening on people's Kindles involuntarily. Like books would just be altered. Have you heard of that happening?
Yeah, I mean, 1984 addressed that as well.
Okay, maybe that's what it was from. But I thought it was Fahrenheit 451.
That I mean, they've taken history and rewritten pieces of it,
Yeah,
and back, a couple of years ago during Riot World, as I called it, they were doing everything that they could to erase history.
yeah. They don't want you to have information because information is power. Nobody
Right.
wants you to have power, so you have to see to it for yourself that you have eternal access to this information, to any information you want. Because if it's digital, it ain't yours. It may
Right.
as well not exist. It can be gone tomorrow.
Yeah, I've got a pretty extensive music collection because of that. I do have Spotify Premium, but
Hmm.
I'd rather own the physical piece of music because that's one of my passions. And so that's how it is with the books with my wife. I mean, we got a ton of books, and a lot of them are extremely useful. I mean, there's stuff about plumbing, there's stuff about gardening, there's stuff about home
Yeah,
repair, there's stuff about financial, there's how to do this, how to do that, and then of course some of the fictional books. But we always thought that if things ever went down, like what this book, it's funny. The book kind of like puts in the words what my wife and I have been thinking about for a long time. You know what I mean? It's like,
hmm,
wow, this book was written, like I could have written this book. Um,
yeah.
and I thought, we're gonna have some, because think about it, and the book addresses this. What is your value to a community if crap ever hits the fan? What are
Oh,
your skills?
you better have some, or you're on the outside looking in.
Yep.
And that was one thing that became very evident and apparent in this book. Uh, is everybody having a place. And I tell you what, you drop all the bull crap real quick, don't you? And the people that didn't got dead real quick,
Hmm.
right? It was work together, uh, et cetera, or you're on the outs. You know,
Yeah, and when you look at human nature, especially in natural disasters like during Hurricane Katrina, you had people actually shooting at the military that was trying to rescue these people.
right.
You know, and you had, I mean, there's a lot of predators out there, and so you know, you either have to have some kind of strength, some kind of value to a community, which is either knowledge or some kind of currency, you know, whether it be medical supplies, ammo, food, you know, those kind of things,
Right.
or you're
And
going to be a predator that takes these things.
it became very apparent in the book very quickly. Either one, you were part of the solution, or one, you were part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it became evident very quickly too who the people were that were going to be a problem, and their character and their values and morals come out very, very quickly. When you're hungry, you very quickly become who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in this, the thing about this book is you could apply it. It doesn't have to be that bad of a crisis. You can apply it to any crisis, right? I don't. You're in the world. Have you ever heard of a man named Jack Spirko? Do you know who Jack Spirko is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he has a podcast I used to listen to religiously. Uh, he always made the statement. He had a catchphrase that he liked to teach people things for when times get tougher, even if they don't. So even if times never get tough, we never go through a crisis. A lot of the things you learn in this book can lead to a way better life for yourself, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's never 100% necessary.
Right.
It'll still make your life better to know this information and to change. If you let it, it'll change your way of thinking, and that's a good thing.
Right.
It's not changing your way of thinking in a bad way, like a lot of things can.
Yeah. It's not fear mongering.
No,
It's not like trying to capitalize on, you know, the it's hard to put into words. It's not capitalizing on, oh man, the world's going to end, because we got a lot of that on YouTube.
yeah.
It's
Actually, it's quite the
literally,
opposite, I would say.
yeah,
Wouldn't you?
it's literally, what if this happens?
Yeah,
Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Like medication.
yeah. Like
Yeah, how
life
much?
will go on.
Hmm.
It's like, what do we have to do to make it happen? How do we get there?
Right.
What does it look like, um, and all that.
And the you know, like little things like you wouldn't think about, like water. You know, everybody thinks about water, power, but how do you preserve food?
Hmm.
If you're out there hunting, you know, there are like balanced aspects of conservation that keeps, you know, the hunting seasons open or whatever.
Right.
Medication. How many, like the percentage of Americans on medication right
Oh,
now?
it's
That was,
crazy.
you know,
It's like 60% of people are on some kind of antidepressant or antipsychotic.
mm-hmm.
And I was reading. It's crazy. So all of a sudden, you take all that away one day. Well, what do you think happens? I mean, you
Right.
know, uh, some people will die instantly, right? A lot of people in the book died immediately.
Mm-hmm.
From the ones with serious diseases. So uh, it can influence you to get your stuff correct right now. That's for darn sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it you know, and that's the thing. It throws around the number, and this number was around the internet as well. About 90% of the population within the first year would be gone.
That's pretty congruent with what they experienced. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at, think about if you're living in downtown Chicago, no access to fresh food, fresh water, you know, communities are disrupted and there's no power. I mean, look at, wasn't there like a big riot in New York City, like in the,
Somewhere I can't remember the look. Yeah, you're
because the
right.
power went out? And then Chicago, I think, went through the same thing.
Yeah. So there's one glaring thing in my mind. I probably didn't think of this till later on. After I put a lot of thought into this scenario. Really, I just can't tell you the profound impact that this book had on my life.
Uh-huh.
I've largely modeled my life after, and one of the things that they did not really talk about in the book, that is it's a major issue, is if an event like this happened, right? Say EMP, power grid's gone. So simultaneously in this country, every nuclear power plant melts down instantaneously at the same time, right? That's something that was never mentioned in the book. I mean, you can't possibly cover everything, and
Right.
obviously, if that happens, probably more people die, and it's a very different scenario. But there's even things you will think of after the fact, like that. You'll think of that stuff after the fact, and you're like, oh, okay, now what do we do about that? And then you realize, well, I can't possibly address every scenario. You think about the most likely, and the things you can control, and I guess you deal with that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reason why the book doesn't really, I mean, even the second book, you kind of start finding out details of the bigger picture, but I think the focus of the book was how one community or one area of the country along the interstate, you know, and how they dealt with it.
Hmm.
Just like, in the 80s, there was a nuclear war movie that was kind of different from the other two that were out. It was called Testament. And it mainly focused on one suburban neighborhood, and everybody was dying from the radiation. You didn't even see a blast, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I watched that movie, but um, yeah, I mean, just the big details and the small details. What would that look like? And when you look at the thing that freaks me out the most is when you look how divided our country is right now, and the lack of empathy that we have for one another. I think that it would be real easy to go into the darkest moments of this book pretty
Uh,
quickly.
this country's a ticking time bomb. Yeah, right now, honestly. Um, I'm trying to. Everybody. My guest here today is Snorelord, the Metalhead Viking Caveman Trucker. I'm trying to post a link to his channel here right now. I just posted an Amazon link to the book. If anybody's interested in getting the book, let me see here if I can post a link to your channel. I keep posting the Amazon link. Why is it doing that? Um,
I could probably do that. I could
can you
probably,
do it?
yeah,
You're a moderator, right?
yeah.
Yeah, you should
Um,
post your link.
I'll link both
Everybody,
my channels because the main channel focuses on the trucking stuff, but then my other channel I kind of go off topic a little bit and talk about the other stuff.
okay. So that's a good topic right there that we should talk about. Uh, this book directly in the beginning has a scenario that would relate to trucking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember what the first events that happened. Everybody should know about those events as a truck driver, because you're going to need to have a plan if there's some kind of how much have a lot of us thought about if there's a crisis, some kind of like big crisis, major event while you're out on the road. Obviously, we've had like earthquakes and Hurricane Katrina, but you got warning. If you got a hurricane coming, you can get out of Dodge. Earthquake, not so much. But this type of scenario, you're potentially thousands of miles from home, and instantly your way of life could change in the blink of an eye. What do you do? What do you do? You
You could
prepared for
be
something like that?
you could be 100 miles from home.
Yeah, yeah,
Suddenly you're on foot.
yeah. I mean, uh, how many supplies can you pack? Do you have a plan to get home? Do you have a plan for your family if you never come home again? Do you have a plan for your family? If you need to meet them somewhere to take care of themselves, to defend themselves, to feed yourself, to if you're 2,000 miles from home, suddenly that may be where you live for the next 20 years. How has really right in
Mhm.
this book, right? How do you deal with that? Are you capable of blending in with the locals as an outsider? Uh,
That's where having the value to the community comes in. What are your skills?
right.
Beyond the phone, beyond the computer programming, beyond the electronics. I mean, are you at least a good listener and like, hey, dig that hole over there and you'll do it.
Yeah.
Do you have the physical capability of doing that?
What's in your trailer?
Right? Oh,
I
I
mean,
always joke that if I had a trailer full of toilet paper and things go down, I'd be a very wealthy man.
yeah. Or do you use it to buy your way into a community,
Right?
right?
Um,
Because nobody else is going to need that anymore. With any luck, you have some food on there or something, cigarettes. Be surprised what becomes currency in you know crazy times.
well, you know what's interesting is that about 10 years ago, I stumbled on an article that interviewed people from the Serbian War, the war
Hmm.
in Serbia back, like back in, what was it, the late 90s, mid 90s, that, the war in Serbia, not Serb, was it Serbia?
Bosnia, wasn't it?
Bosnia, yeah. And they said these are the things that you wouldn't think about. Like everybody thinks of food, everybody thinks of water, everybody thinks of, being able to start fires or whatever, but no one thinks about bandages. No one thinks about rubbing alcohol. No one thinks about tools. No one thinks about um, things that you would normally. And for a while, we were buying like lighters. I would just have. We're not smokers. We don't smoke
Right.
anything, but we have a lot of lighters because number one, we like lighting fireworks, but lighters become currency. And so I know
Yeah.
people that will buy whole strips of lighters, and then and with there's a YouTuber I follow, this Bull Hansen, Bjorn Bull Hansen. He's a guy that goes out camping regardless of the weather. He's a backpacker, right? And so you watch a little bit of stuff like that, and so it got me thinking about, well, on the what ifs. What if there is some kind of attack? What if whatever? So
Well, how about if we change that and say when?
when, yeah.
I mean, uh, is that out of line? Is that even out of line?
No, because a lot of people want to see our empire go down.
Hell, people from within want to see that happen.
Right. Well, I mean, and to be honest with you, I'm not going to try to get too political here,
Right.
but
Right.
I think that in order to defeat the morale of a country, you have to let them lose faith in their systems. So if they lose faith in the system, when you go to tear it down and build it back up,
Hmm.
people, like if you think your house is a piece of crap, and you just say, well, let's just tear it down, you got to hate the house before you tear it down,
Right.
with the promise that things will be built better. And I think that's kind of what's happening,
Are you
is they're
are you
destroying the
trying to
house.
say build back better?
I didn't say that term.
No, I get it. Yeah, and then besides all that, there's this thing called nature. I mean, that will teach all of us a lesson when we're not looking,
Yep.
not paying attention. Say, hey, pay attention to me. Look what I can do. You have a Yellowstone that is well past its cycle for eruption and cataclysmic change. You have a sun that's blasting out coronal mass ejections every how many days? How long before one of those is on target for us? Um, hey, it's. I tried talking to a dinosaur about it to see what they had to say, but they're all dead. They're all dead.
I'm going to ask you a strange question, and
Hmm.
people in the chat are going to think I'm loony. Okay.
Okay,
How old are you?
46.
46. Okay, so we're about the same age. I'm about 4 years older than you, 5 years
Okay.
older. Okay. Think back of when you were a kid. Don't you think the sun looks different? Like
Uh, no,
it's
you're
more
not.
white than yellow.
If you only knew. I have this conversation with my wife all the time, and I actually, I'll one up you with that one off the air because I'm not saying it on the record because people will think I got 7 heads, and you might know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll talk. No, I don't disagree with you.
Okay. And what's funny is my wife's like, "Oh, it's funny you mentioned that," because I was sitting there like one day we were in the car having a conversation, my wife and I, we have a really good relationship. We have a lot of deep conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking. And it's like, you know what? This might sound weird, but things feel different when I'm outside. The sun looks different, and if you go back to the solar eclipse we had a few years ago, you know, when I was out there with a welding helmet looking at the sun, the solar eclipse, and if you looked on the ground, everything was moon shaped. You know, like the leaves, the shadows were all moon shaped, and the sky had a certain haze. You could tell something was different, and it feels like, you know, and we've lived in the same house for over 20 years, so I see different things, and so it's kind of interesting. And so I was mentioning that to my wife, and she's like, "Well, here's a video about it." I'm like, "Holy crap!"
Hmm.
By that Suspicious Observers, right? Yeah. Yep, Suspicious Observers. See if I can find their channel. Put the link in there.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid. You know, deer hunting up by us is over Thanksgiving in November, and I
Mhm.
remember when I was young, the snow was knee deep and it was well below zero. Hell, it doesn't even snow now here until almost January. You might get snow late December. You're lucky to have it for Christmas sometimes. But you know, back in the early '80s, you know, it was obviously I was knee high to a grasshopper back
Mhm.
then. But the snow was deep and it was bitter cold because we used to go out deer hunting with 2 or 3 pairs of coveralls on. Now you damn near go out in a damn t-shirt or
Mhm.
you know, light sweatshirt. But yeah, it's a lot of things are changing.
And so, you know, what's funny is when we bought a generator, and I was like, well, I'm gonna do some research on generators. And so I expected to find a bunch of prepper channels, right? There was a couple, but most of them were people that live in hurricane prone areas.
Yeah.
Like, or you live out in the woods. Like my sister lives in upstate New York in the middle of nowhere, and they have a rotary phone because the power goes out all the time during snowstorms.
Hmm.
And so that's the only way you can communicate with the outside is through that rotary phone.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, so yeah, I mean, Mother Nature is definitely a big part. And like I said, the book kind of goes on. You don't know what happens until the end of the book on what the exact um, circumstances that created the grid going offline. They suspected the EMP when the old cars. Have you thought about the old car thing?
Uh, have you watched some of my videos? I got like 30 of them in my shed.
And that's one of the things that the wife wants to do. You know, there was an '82 Suburban that we were kind of eyeballing. Um, there's a dealership right down the road from here that's got all these old cars, and we're thinking, you know, but they want too much money because they're classics, you know. But
Right.
and that Suspicious Observers, one of the people connected with that channel, they're actually building an EMP proof vehicle for just such an occasion. But they're thinking it's inevitable from the sun, not from, you know,
I actually
people.
kind of think so too. But uh, in today's world, I don't know honestly which one is first. Yeah, things are so crazy right now, man. And then you know, in the last few days, all the events and it's people are now's a good time to just lay low. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just stay under the radar a little
Right.
bit.
Let me Google something. See if I ran um, EMP.
Yeah, well, he's googling. Everybody, dropped a link for the Snorelord channel, both channels here. Check them out. Definitely check them out. And we're reviewing a book today, 1 Second After by William R. Forstchen. We highly recommend it. Heavy impact on your life it should have for when times get tough, or even if they don't. How about
All
that? I'm
right.
going to steal that.
I'm about to blow your mind here.
Okay.
I want you to Google
Okay.
Iran EMP.
Iran. Boy, all these keywords here. Demonetization is imminent. Okay. I'm here.
Okay.
I don't want to hear this.
What's the
How old?
first? Look at that first top one. EMP task force. Look at that.
Mine is yeah. When so how old? Oh, April 30th of 2022. Ooh, this doesn't look like some website that should be on. This is a .us.
Yep.
Okay, so now oh, then there's that, right? So that happened. This book happened, and here's what drives me nuts. We still haven't hardened our power grid, right? Our
Hmm.
power grid is not hardened.
No.
All of our whatever nuclear power plants is still online. Why are they still on the have internet access? It should be all on a private network.
Right.
The people that run the show have learned nothing, and we will all pay a price for it someday.
Yeah.
So you better plan on making a difference in your own life, because if you're assuming that the people in charge give two craps about it, you're sadly mistaken.
They'll
Sadly
be
mistaken.
all snugged up in their little bunkers, and
I mean, we had money to harden things in other countries because we did it.
Mhm.
Why not here?
Right.
That's a type 1 error, because our main enemies, that the two that we're all worried about right now, know this very well, and they have actually hardened their grids. They've hardened their systems, their military.
Yeah, but that's but no, the book gets you thinking. So let's talk about that. Medication is one.
Hmm.
Let's say you're more than 100 miles from where you need to be. We have a plan in place. We have a bug out plan. We have a bug out spot, but a lot of those plans are kind of in the crapper if you can't even get a vehicle on the road.
Yeah, assuming you can make it there.
Yeah. Um, and then how much food and water is the tricky one, because you can't store water indefinitely.
Right.
They make expensive filters that you've put in place and then of course there's the old fashioned boiling, but are you near a water source? I know people that will buy land specifically to make sure that it's got a water source, like a stream running through it and all that.
Hmm.
So I
And
mean,
then
just little
and then
things like
people will try to take these things from you.
that. Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing you hear all the time. Well, if this happens or if that happens, I'm just going to run off and live in the woods and do this and do that. Well, guess what? So are 300 million other people. So hunt and fish all you want. That's not going to last very long, because 300 million other people are going to be doing the same damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
So better put some more thought into it than that.
Yeah, and people don't realize how well balanced, like the conservation departments. Their hunting seasons for a reason,
Hmm.
and fishing seasons for a reason, and or fishing limits. And when you don't have the government to restock the lakes. Think about all the man-made lakes in Missouri's. We've got a ton of man-made lakes, and then the power goes out, and what's going to control the dam? So it changes the geographical aspect. I mean, there's so many little things that this book makes you that like, and it's not overwhelming. It's an easy story to follow.
Absolutely.
The characters are believable.
Oh, and boy, do you become attached.
Yep.
You form an emotional bond with these people.
Yeah, because anybody who's like, especially if you're from South Carolina, if you're from the Carolinas, man, you're gonna. I mean, they list specific parts of the interstate, the exit numbers, the towns. It takes place in Black Mountain. Anybody who's ran through that area, you'll know exactly.
Swannanoa.
Mm-hmm. You'll
Yep.
know exactly what. So it makes it's not like some futuristic dystopian deal. It's literally something that could happen like in 10 minutes, and this is the story that would evolve.
Boy, I'm not ready for that.
You're not ready in 10 minutes?
No, we need some more time. Yeah, well, honestly, you could never possibly be ready for everything that this situation presents.
No,
Impossible.
And the book's not designed to make you live in fear either.
No.
It's just more of a story like, hey, what if this happened? Bet you didn't think of this. You know,
That's one of the things I like about it. It's not fear mongering. It's not it doesn't I don't think it sensationalizes one single thing. Do you?
no, not at all.
In fact, I would go as far as to say it downplays uh, things more than sensationalize.
Right.
I would have to say.
Everything in the story is believable. Like there's no way that would happen. There's none of that. It's not like, and that's kind of how books and movies are made these days. I mean, perfect example is the movies like Fast and Furious series. I mean, it's just impossible. None of that is in the book. There's no
um,
there's no political agenda at all. There's no
there's no saying one side is going to oppress you and one side's going to save you. It's very truthful.
It's not anti-government, but it's not anti any other country. It's not. I mean, it's just literally a big what if the power goes out, what would you do? This is how this community would handles it. So think about Civil War. You know what the biggest killer in the Civil War was?
It was like starvation and cold and stuff like that, wasn't it?
Infection, yeah, infection too.
Yeah.
People think it was just about the bullets hitting people. No, it was the things that happened after the battles, the things that happened before the battles. A big strategy in war is to take out food and logistics. You do that, poison the well, and you don't even need to fire a shot.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it just makes you think, and the thing that really kind of, because of the way the story ends, it really makes you think about the medication aspect and how important it is to stay healthy.
Yes.
Because the medication aspect is, I mean, what do you do when you can't get your medication?
Yeah, no matter how simple, even a sleep apnea machine.
Yep. Oh yeah, my CPAP went out a couple of weeks ago. Power supply just died. That was the longest night of my life, man. I've gotten so acclimated to that. The next morning I called and they're like, "Oh, we don't know if we'll get to you till Monday." I'm like, "No, we need to get to me today to deal with this." And they gave me a new power supply, but I mean, so yeah, and to kind of give you an example, a few years ago we went camping, and we went in June, like the hottest day of the year, and it was tent camping. It was absolutely miserable. No fans, no relief from the heat, hardly any light, and I couldn't sleep. I think I slept like maybe an hour at most. And so think about your house, what it would look like with no power. Think of what your city would look like.
Right.
So I mean, and people that served overseas, like in Iraq or Afghanistan, have probably, I'm just assuming, but they've probably seen, what the world looks like without modern lights and modern technology, and little things like smells, like EPA standards, like where do you put the waste?
Where do you bury the bodies?
Where do you bury the bodies? What how do you clean yourself? How do you we're so used to deodorants and perfumes and
yeah, it makes you wonder what it was really like to live in the 1800s, doesn't it?
Right.
It had to be a smelly damn place in the Old West.
But to them, it was probably nothing. It was just
right.
how it was,
Yeah.
Now you walk into a room, you walk into the truck stop bathroom, and you got that one guy that hasn't showered in 4 days, practically swimming in the sink. You're just like, oh, imagine that like on a global scale.
Oh, man. So okay, so we both say okay, it kind of made us think a certain way. Let's talk then about, if any, what actions did this book make you take? 'Cause I have some.
Go for it. You
All right.
go.
I packed up and moved first.
Really?
Oh yeah, man. We were out of town, man. Out of the city. Uh,
Where did you live
not
at?
lived in a town of probably 30,000 people,
Oh,
all
okay.
in, and moved. Not all that far from there, but just away from the population,
Hmm.
a ways, 30 miles or so. Uh, Now we have very few neighbors, and I kind of like it that way. So did that. Um, I can't own enough generators. I have like this generator thing where have them all over the place.
Hmm.
And then there's obviously a lot of things you don't talk about. You
Right.
don't. So the rest of it, I don't really care to talk too much about. But you know, it had, yeah, we moved. That was
Wow.
it was that important to me.
We've got a second piece of property. Well, we've got some property, and then we bought a second house, and we live pretty modestly. We don't like all of our vehicles are paid off. I think the newest thing we own is a 2014 or 2013 car, and my truck's a 2014. Um, we take our extra money, and that's what it went to. And it's about 30 miles from here. And the main goal was so my wife could be near her parents. But then when things started to get kind of sketchy the last couple of years, we're like, you know what? This might have a double purpose.
Hmm.
Because I know another person, I have a friend that he was working around Milwaukee when things went bad in Minneapolis there
Okay.
in the Kenosha
Yeah,
deal.
that area went bad too.
Um, and he was shot at
Ooh,
out in the middle of nowhere.
wow.
And and he and I were talking quite a bit. And right before that happened, he got up and moved too. He moved from Milwaukee out to the country. Um, and he's now off the road because of that. And I've always said that I'll come off the road completely if I ever get shot at. And you hear about that, like in Chicago and stuff like that. But um, so we were kind of formulating, the what if plans. My wife, she does a lot of what ifs. It keeps her up at night.
It's one of your favorite things about me.
It's very entertaining because it'll be like 2 a.m. We can't sleep. It's like, what if this and what if that.
Well, hey, there's got to be one person like that. You just can't have both of you like that.
Right.
You know?
And so, but we have a friend that I met right before I started Landstar. And so about 2013, he was telling me a lot of this economic stuff, and he's a very well-traveled world traveler. And he's like, this is how people survive famines. This is how people survive this. And he told us about the rice and the beans and how long it'll last, and have this on hand and this on hand. And he's an economic expert he was telling me the things that are just now coming to light, when it comes to
Hmm.
the economy and maybe some of the conspiracies which we won't get into. But so I was already of that mindset. So when everybody started telling me about this book, it's like, Steve, it's literally right up your alley. And sure enough, man, I think I read that like in 3 days. I think I read it that quickly because I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
And so to answer your original question, it definitely cemented what we've already started. Like, okay, yeah, we're definitely on the right track, including the moving, right?
Okay.
Springfield has really kind of degraded quite a bit, and we see the writings on the wall, and it's just time to get out anyways, regardless of.
Yeah, the big cities are no place to be. I mean, with all the whatever you call it, unrest or dissent or political unrest going on, most of it's in our big cities right now. It's no place to be even this removed from that. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not safe. It's not
No,
safe.
I agree. And Waukesha, Minneapolis, and Chicago are perfect examples of that.
Yeah.
You know, Houston's gotten really bad. I watch a channel called Active Self Protection, and they have a lot of footage from Houston. A lot of, you know, what they do is they do a lot of, you know, awareness and defense training, and so what they'll do is they'll use different security camera footage of, you know, robberies and things of that nature to see, okay, what could have this person, you know, it's training to protect yourself. And so and it's always in these big cities, you know, they've gotten worse. And so yeah, it just kind of, the book just kind of cemented that we were on the right track of, you know, with the books and the trying to stay off the medication and trying to get out in the country and learning how to, I mean, that's why I learned how to hunt.
Right.
You know, before November, I didn't know how to hunt. You know, I didn't even own a hunting rifle.
Okay. So,
And so, you know, I learned how to do that this year.
right. Now, going back to the book
Mhm.
versus kind of what you experience in real life. So, I imagine you're not going to convince everybody in real life that they need to be prepared for things like this or think about things like this. And sometimes, you know, if you have a family, say, you know, you have young kids at home, right? You're the father. You're going to do what's best for their interest on their behalf. They don't really need to understand too much, you know, the basics maybe of here's what we do if this happens or whatever. It's like
Right.
going in the basement if a tornado comes, right? Those
Mhm.
kinds of things. How many people in the book, based on the characters that we got to know well, do you believe that given advanced education that you could have probably convinced most of those characters to prepare for something like that?
Like what do you mean? I'm not
I think so. John was the main character,
right.
right? I think given his background, if you were to sit down and have a conversation about with him that the potential for something like this to happen, he probably would have listened, right?
Mhm.
Due to his background. Uh, some of the other folks in the book, probably not so much, right?
Yeah, completely clueless.
Yeah, I forget all their names. It's been a couple years since I listened to it. I used to try to do it once every about every 6 months, but it's been a couple years. Uh, any thoughts on? So okay, back to real life again.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're here talking about this today. What's the approach to talk to people about something like this, or do you just kind of, is it kind of one of those things where you just have to kind of sit back, put the bug in their ear, and let them figure it out, let them learn for it themselves, or
I
learn it
think
themselves?
I think it just depends on the person you're talking to. I mean, I know people that in my life that are acquaintances that literally have no idea. Like they said, Steve, you have such a dark outlook. And I'm like, no, it's more of a realism, right? And then there are people that, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. Like you talk to somebody, and you're like, this guy's screwed, and then you talk to another person, like, wow, that's a person I want to hang out with if things ever went south in any situation. And so it just depends on who you're talking to. I mean, you
Yeah,
know, there are people. I mean, hell, I can't get people to listen to the basic stuff.
yeah,
So I just do the bug in the ear and I tell people about this book. It's the perfect way to do that. Like, hey man, you like books? You ought to read or listen to this book.
yeah. I've done that successfully with a few people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't talk too much about this. Number one, if somebody's giving me crap about it, I just say, "Oh, you're welcome." You know, I've I've thought of all these things, so you don't have to. Or I
Right?
say something like, "Well, you'll thank me later," and then I just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not one of these, like, a lot of these prepper channels on YouTube. There's not one that I'm subscribed to. Um, I tried to watch a few of them. There was a guy named Viking Preparedness, and he would show you certain things, like he's out in the Ozarks somewhere, you know. So it was cool to watch, and he has some good philosophies, you know, because he would just talk, you know, just philosophy stuff, right? But then he started a Patreon, and then basically did, the world's going to end, you're going to be screwed, so you better watch my thing on Patreon. Well, I talk about this on Patreon. You know, make sure you buy my course, you buy my book, so you'll survive the upcoming disaster that I've told you about. You know, and so I completely shut that whole genre out.
Or the ones that say, you know, collapse is coming, so convert all your money to gold and silver, and it just so happens that I sell it, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, then why are you taking U.S. dollars for gold and silver, right?
Mhm.
It's like there's ulterior motives sometimes, which I think is a good idea to have those things, but
Right,
not all, never all of anything.
right.
Can't eat that. I will say gold and silver played what almost zero part in this book, right? Was it ever even mentioned? Very little.
Not at all.
No.
The the currency was ammo,
Cigarettes for a while,
cigarettes, alcohol,
and then eventually individual 22 shells.
hmm
Um, food,
food, and skills.
skills. Yes, that's something that needs to be talked about.
You had a higher ration amount if you were important in the community, like a nurse or a doctor or a pilot. Um,
Hmm.
you know,
Engineer,
yep.
electrician.
And then the library was a well protected place, and the people that ran the library were able to find some old books and try to create something with it, without trying to give spoilers. But um, yeah, gold and silver are never mentioned at all,
No.
um, other than how valueless the money was at that point. Oh, and cars, old vehicles, the skill set to keep vehicles running, the skill set to change the fuel. Like they had cars running on coal.
Yep.
Remember that? And you hear about some guy in some garage out in the middle of nowhere that was able to, convert his car to be run off of, cooking oil and stuff like that. Those kind of skills is what's really kind of will separate, you know.
Yeah.
I think intellectual property is going to be huge. I mean, people won't want to hurt you or steal from you if you can offer something, you know.
Something that they can't take from you.
Right.
And that's knowledge, skill
Knowledge.
set.
Yep.
Um, well, I want to say some things, but I don't want to give too many things away about it. So there's a college. There was a college in this town
hmm
where this happened, right?
Yeah.
And we all have our thoughts on the that generation or whatever. But
hmm
boy, did they snap each other into shape pretty quick and
They did.
become a valuable part of the community.
hmm
And most of them are outsiders.
And knowing your terrain, like the people that know every trail, every hunting trail, every every piece of property. My brother-in-law is like that with one of the towns around here. Is he can tell you everything about everybody in that town, including the history of the last 100 years of the family. It's pretty impressive. Those are the kind of people that you don't want to just move to a new area, and that's the thing. Community is what makes these people survive.
Yes.
How many people don't even talk to their next door neighbor?
Hmm.
you know so and that's kind of the message, is the community. When you get into the second book, the community sacrifices makes a lot of sacrifices just to keep the community strong. And then there's definitely aspects of the book that keep them from turning into everybody else. How do we separate ourselves morally from the outsiders wanting to invade and steal? you know
Right.
So I thought that was important as well. Community is
And,
community
and
is great.
one thing worth noting: government was nowhere to be found, largely for anyone, anything, medicine, food, communication, nothing.
And that was a point made in the book when like, you know, when we were attacked at Pearl Harbor, you had the president over the radio waves, you know, calming down the Americans, right? Or, you know, or getting them all riled up, you know, one or the other. There was no soothing voice. There was nobody in the government that was at least there to lie to you, to tell you everything was going to be okay. There was nothing. There was no
Yeah, people didn't even know who president was
right.
for the longest time because
Or
they had
even
no idea what happened.
The original president, yeah.
Yeah.
So that part of the book really stood out to me about how, well, I mean, complete silence. You know, when was the last time you heard complete silence? No air conditioners running, no engines in the, you know, no traffic.
That would just be creepy.
It would kind of like on 9/11 when you looked up and there was no planes.
Yeah.
You know, remember that?
Right.
And but like that on a major level, I think that those kind of, you know. So what parts of the book stood out the most, without, you know, giving spoilers away, you think?
Obviously, like, I think what you said, the medication part, and you know, everybody thinks, oh yeah, okay, so insulin, heart problems, blah blah blah. Think about the psychiatrics. The number of people that are addicted to painkillers. Um, what else? There's a host of things. Not only are some people going to die, a lot of them are going to become very mentally unstable really quickly. So that kind of stood out. What else? Boy, there's just so much, just all of it. I mean, how many people really died? Ways that they died, the levels that people would go to for their own self-interest, cannibalism. You know, whoever thought about what do you do with all the dead bodies? And then just what really made me think is being an outsider. It really made me think about being on the road, if I even wanted to do it anymore. I hate to say it scared me, but it put a lot of thought in my head about, ooh, hey, do I even want to be over the road anymore? Do I ever want to be more than like 100 miles from home, or 50 miles? I think 100 miles is pushing it. You got a lot to overcome in 100 miles. You won't make it. 50 miles is stretching it, but I really had a lot of those thoughts, and I even changed the way I was on the road. I would take, I had a whole bag of goodies that would go with me. Never left the truck. There's things I could maybe use to help get myself home. That was number one priority if something like that ever happened. I need to get home. And then after that, well, in addition to that is, okay, I'm gone. You know, I still have an obligation to the people back at home to make sure they're taken care of. So how do I set things up at home to make sure that they're okay without me for a period of time, if not forever?
Right. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. I mean,
yeah, it was very, and it still is. It's very important to me. Still think a lot about that. Especially, I mean, you see the things you see happening, right? Nothing's far-fetched anymore.
Yeah, and also, do you think of yourself as a victim, or could you overcome? Like, what steps do you make to keep from becoming a victim?
If you're a victim, you're dead, I think.
Yeah.
So you kind of agree on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you know, I've always told the story of a guy at the range, had a brand new F-150 and had this brand new AR, and you know, and you know, he was the know-it-all in the class, and meanwhile this guy had the purple legs. It was 500 pounds. He could barely get out of the pickup truck, and it's like, man, all you did was in a crap hits the fan scenario, you just bought somebody else a bunch of cool stuff that they could survive with, because you couldn't even run across the street if you had to.
But he did something. You know, even if that's all he did, he made somebody else's life better, which is, hey, he did something. The victim mentality in a situation like that will get you dead. I think a key to, like before any of that happens to change your life, I think a person has to be very humble. Because if you're not, if you're not humble, you think you know it all, or you think you have everything figured out, you're not open to any possibilities of learning something new or making a change.
Right.
And you got to approach this saying, like, even if you're a smart guy, maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're this, maybe you're that, just say, okay, I know nothing. Let's figure this thing out. Talk to some smart people, and really look into read this book. Read books like it. You don't have to copy them, but it'll provoke thought. It's the biggest thing that books like this. If a book provokes you to think, it was an important book.
Yeah, I agree, and I believe this one's up there with the books that you mentioned, because, like, Rich Dad Poor Dad, that changed my perception of money. It changed.
Doesn't it? If anybody hasn't read Rich Dad, hey, maybe this ought to be a regular thing.
We could.
Because it's important. Okay, so going back to trucking. This book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, you learn things from this you apply in business. Obviously, some books more than others. Rich Dad Poor Dad, learning how money works, learning how business and life, and maybe the conventional thing you're taught from the day of you get out of school is you have to go to college, learn a trade to get a good job, right? Get in with a good company with benefits. Well, that's not for everybody.
Right.
There's other ways to do things. Some ways are better. But yeah, there's something to be learned everywhere.
Well, the thing about Rich Dad Poor Dad is it gets lumped into these, how to make money books, right? And
it's not.
The reality is it's not. It's a book that's the only thing it's meant to do is change your perception of how you've been viewing things, how an American views things for the last 100 years.
We're so lied to in this country about our education system. I don't think it does young people much justice. I really don't.
The best math class I had was in high school. It was consumer personal. They actually taught you how to do your 1040 easy form. They taught you how to balance your checkbook. They taught you how to balance your credit card. They taught you how to order a car. They taught you, finances. They kind of dabbled in the stock market kind of thing, but I think it was way more useful than the algebras and the trigonometries and and things of that nature. But yeah, that book was meant to change your perception, as is this book. This book is meant to just change your perception on one aspect of your life that you have no idea how connected it is to everything, which is electricity.
Yeah. And it's something, you hear all the time. It's cliche of, our grandpick and our grandparents' day, this and that, and the other thing. Well, guess what? We need to learn all that, because we could end up back there someday. Now, back in the Great Depression, it was bad. You had the Dust Bowl going on at the same time. Great Depression, economy sucked. But back then, if we had that again in this country, it would be way worse. Because back then, everybody could feed themselves. They had skills. Everybody had a garden. Everybody knew how to sew or build something. Everybody, we weren't that far removed from years of doing everything by hand.
Right.
Now, nobody knows how to do anything.
Oh yeah, you got truck drivers out here that don't even know how to change a light bulb.
Yeah. Skills are precious, but I need more skills. I need to get with somebody hands-on to teach me how to weld. I want to learn welding.
Oh, I know how to weld. I'm a great welder.
Okay. Granted, no electricity, no welding, but you can do a lot of things leading up to that.
Right. I almost went. I welded for a couple of years at Tracker Marine building boats, and then I welded for a custom fab place. I forget how many years I did, maybe 1 or 2. Remember when I welded for American Products? Yeah. So I've done TIG weld, MIG weld, aluminum, steel, galvanized, stainless. The only thing I haven't welded is the old school farmer stick welding. I haven't done that, but TIG and MIG and and I knew how to make welds both functional and pretty. I mean, I took pride in my welds. I was a good welder. Even to this day, I'll see something metal, I'll look at the welds. I'm like, well, that's a crappy job. Get some part, for the truck that's like $5,000, and it's got like these chintzy, $2 an hour welds on them.
Yeah. Let me. We got a lot of people. I'm not, you guys. I'm not ignoring your comments. A lot of good comments. Just deeply enthralled in this discussion here. I nerd out like that sometimes. But a lot of people in here. Grafton, Insult Investor, Jerome Jones finally made it on time. Jackknife TV, Don, Lawrence, Rory, and from Dallas. Jackknife TV says, well, it would definitely get rid of some of the most problematic people in our society. Yes.
Yes and
but
no.
It takes some time to sort some of these people out. Some of them definitely get sorted out in short order, but some of them it takes a while. Grafton says, is there 3 books in the series? Yeah. As far as I know, it's this one and then the second one of well, this is a 2-part book, right? Or audio book, right?
No, there's 3 in the series. So the first one is 1 second after, the second one is 1 year after, and then the third one is called The Final Day.
I did not know about this Final Day.
Yeah.
How long? When did that come out?
I want to say 2017. Let me look here.
I did not know about this.
Yeah.
Now I have something to do. Same author?
Yep.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, let's see if I can find it here. Yep. It's called The Final Day, a John Matherson novel.
Okay.
It's the 3rd in the series. And it came out, let's see, when did it come out? It came out in 2017.
Okay. Now I got something. I think I'm going to go back and start from the beginning because I need to brush up before I get onto that book.
Yeah. I'm almost done with the second book. Second book it was written quite a few years later after this book,
mm-hmm.
but it literally like it's seamless. Like you can put this in one big huge book and it would you couldn't tell, right? You couldn't tell it was 2 separate stories. It's literally a continuation of the first book.
My only problem with the second book is I wish it was longer. It's so short compared to the first one.
Right.
I just it can't. It needs to be longer.
And I'm about I don't know, 50 pages from the end of the second book.
Okay. So
no spoilers.
No. Jackknife TV says, how about all the food plant fires, the massive die-offs of cattle? Pacific Union Railroad says they're going to limit train capacity to California in the gas and oil industry. Yeah, I mean, who needs to be attacked by an enemy? We got enough problems.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of moving parts right now, Grafton says. Yep, that's true. Okay, Running Aces, he got me straight. 451, they burned books, not change them. You're right. Then it's 1984 where they would change books, right? Yeah. Okay.
And Running Aces has a good question. Brave New World versus 451 versus 1984. Which is more likely?
Ooh. I have not read Brave New World.
Me neither. My wife has. What do you think of that?
I see all 3 of them happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I see aspects of the other 2, 451 and 1984. Definitely 1984. I mean, you can't. There's no denying that.
There's a shirt my wife owns. It's got Fahrenheit 451 is 1 circle, Brave New World is another circle, 1984 is the 3rd circle, and then a circle in the middle of all of them says "We are here." Right? Is that
where they all overlap.
Where they all overlap. It said, "This is where we are." I think that's
not a good place to be.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all. Like I said, I haven't read Brave New World yet, even though it's like. Yeah.
Read Brave New World.
Yeah, wife's saying we need to read Brave New World. It's a great Iron Maiden album, so
I got to write these 2 books down: Final Day and Brave New World.
Yep.
Okay. Shall be done. Brother Craig says, 1 second after is a very good read. Easy too. Jack Spirko's awesome. MSB member for years now. Yeah, I'm a member too. Actually, I think mine lapsed. Bull of the Woods in-house. Thanks for coming in, Mark Ely. Running Aces says, sounds like this book is like the show Jericho. I think actually Jericho was probably modeled after this book, was it not? I've never seen Jericho, but I'm just going from what I've heard.
Jericho, I want to say it came out about the same time. There's definitely Jericho was. It was a shame that show went off the air after the second season, because you kind of want to find out what happened at the end there. But there's definitely like a lot of similarities. Let's see when it happened. The show was out in 2006, so yeah, it's very possible that, because it was also believable characters, and it's literally the struggle of one town and how they're dealing with. Now it's a different scenario. It's it's a terrorist attack of nuclear weapons, and so how this town deals with it. So yeah, there's definitely a ton of similarities with Jericho. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. I think it's on Netflix. I'm not sure.
Okay. Any idea how many years that was on?
Just 2. It's just 2 seasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there I dropped there's the what happened here?
Amazon link.
We still here?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I went funny there for a second. Here's the Amazon link for that book if you're looking for it. Snorelord's put his link in here. Go ahead and drop your link every now and then if make sure people checking out your channel. Fate Trucking in the House is a great book. Yeah, he's one of those that I bullied into reading this book, or I think he got the audio book actually.
Bullied.
I bullied him into it. I bully him into a lot of things. I got another book series I'm working on bullying him into, and he absolutely loved this one. And he's one that never really considered anything like this. And then all of a sudden one day he's done. He's like, I gotta do some things different. I'm like, yeah, you do, don't you? GW Bowles says absolutely loved this series. Yeah, how could you not? How could you not? GW Bowles says love to chat about this. Okay, give me. Let me get through some comments here. Should I throw a link up, Snorelord, or is it just me and you today?
Throw a link up.
Okay.
People are tired of us talking. Let somebody else deal with it.
I'm gonna put a link in here. All I ask is if you're coming in, come in wanting to talk about this book or share something. Share your thoughts on this book, because this is all about book review today. We're not touching trucking unless it's related to this book. How about that? So we gotta have a break from that sometime. We gotta have a break from trucking.
Yeah. Yeah, I get burned out on the whole echo chamber. It's like, watch your expenses, do the math, don't do dumb things. You can only say that for so long, right?
Yeah, it's just weird how the last couple of years that kind of just went by the wayside. When you got to restate the obvious all the time. Okay, Grafton says suspicious observers have a real good textbook. It's nerdy to read, but it's broken down very well. Okay. I should be writing some of these things down. Vic, I think Vic Med popped in here. So what's up? Thanks for coming in, Vic.
Another book that I would encourage people to read. It's a hard read. It was a hard listen. It's called The Fourth Turning. And what that is it's basically, it goes over the 80 to 100 year cycle that the hardships. So what were we doing 100 years ago? Back in 1922, we were dealing with, post World War II. We were dealing with the Spanish flu. We were dealing with the Dust Bowl. We were dealing.
20s would have been post World War I.
Yeah, World War I. That's what I meant.
Dust Bowl was in the 30s. So the 20s was the Roaring 20s.
Yeah, and so it does like a psychological, economical breakdown of that old adage of soft men create hard times create strong men create good times. That cycle. It kind of
They
goes.
eventually you cycle right back to
Yeah.
yeah.
And they wrote this in 1997, and you could have swore that they wrote it yesterday.
Okay.
We've
Sean.
turned into a good old book club here, DIY.
Hey, that's all right. You guys got to have different interests. It can't all be one thing.
Yeah.
Sean Fairman's heading to Menominee looking for UFOs. Grafton says UFO. Man, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Gary Bates says military tankers rolling around in Iowa. Yeah, I think that's what they do. Sean wants to know how we're going to dispatch from a safe haven. I think at that point that's out the window, right?
Yeah. I'll be dispatching myself to the right place.
Yeah. Insult Investor says, there you go. A little bit of knowledge. Honey fixes most infections. Okay. Sean says the Amish is the way to go. The Amish books. Yep. Insult Investor says when he walked off the plane into Cambodia for the first time, the wall of smell hit me hard, but after 2 days, I didn't smell it anymore. I can't even imagine. Because not only, is there things not clean, but kind of the other end. Where do you put all that dookie stuff? And a lot of them don't have the education to know not to put that dookie stuff near your water supply, right? That's how you get a lot of those diseases.
You don't even have to go to another country anymore. You just have to go to Stockton or Ontario or
Yeah.
San Francisco or, down your street.
Yeah, that's true. Sean says Madison would be a safe place. Hand meal cards out there. I don't believe Madison would be a safe place, especially probably today. I would not go there today. Trey says a lot of those people in Houston came from Louisiana. Do a little more research. Yeah, a lot of them stayed from Katrina. They got relocated there. That's how Houston became the fourth largest city.
Mm-hmm.
They overtook Philadelphia, I think, just because of Hurricane Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Steve Wildman lives in a compound. 5 neighbors who think alike. There you go. Don't let them know. They'll come burn you down, smoke you out. Mark Cerrone, sorry I'm late. That's all right. We're just doing a little book review here today. Steve Wildman says ham radio a must.
I've been curious about ham radio operation.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that, because I'm still one of those guys that runs with the CB radio. I mean, that CB radio saved me more times than not, more times than the GPS, more times than the phone. And even to this day, does it get stupid sometimes? Yeah, but you just turn it down in Memphis, you turn it down in Jersey or whatever. But I've always been fascinated with the ham radio stuff. And so I think that would be another skill that you can bring to a community.
Yes, it is. I can't remember in the book. I don't think it played a huge part because power was so precious.
It does in the second.
Yeah, because you could hook it, car batteries, 12 volt, blah, blah, blah. In the second book, some things did start to come back online, albeit very, very little.
Very primitive,
but, yeah. All right, we got some trucking talk here. Let's skip over that. Steve says store food books and how to do it right is a great tool. I'm a boomer, so we learned on a farm growing up. Yeah, I have some leftover skills from that too, from being a farmer. But that's the thing, you can have the knowledge and the skills and the ability, but sometimes you get a little older. If you don't maintain your body doesn't want to keep up. Right? Or mistreated my body, for some years, and it doesn't want to do what it used to do sometimes.
Well, one of the things that people can do, and I know this from experience, whether you're religious or not, find a local community church garden that allows you to work with them, learn from them, and you get part of the harvest come harvest season. That we've recently started doing that, and you learn a lot, and the rewards are just so much better. I mean, it goes back to that community thing, because again, that's how people survive in the book is through community. And if you don't know anything about gardening, find the person that does. You know, get involved in community gardens. They're not just at churches. You know, a lot of shelters have them in place, and you know, I encourage anybody. You know, just like hunting. I wanted to learn hunting. My dad was a fisher. He was a fisherman. He loved fishing. When we moved from Phoenix to Springfield, we were fishing every day after school, you know, because we're like literally a rock's throw from a lake. But he never took me hunting, right? Well, I take it back. We went hunting once, which was literally a walk in the woods, and he had his rifle with him. That was it. But so I decided that I wanted to learn how to hunt. And so some friends of mine took me back December of the year before last. I missed completely. I was completely idiotic, you know. But then last November, we went on opening season. I bagged 2 deer. They showed me how to clean them. They showed me essentially how to do that. And that was it was fun. It was expensive because you got to buy the gear or whatever. But there was a dual purpose. It wasn't just for the sport. It was for, okay, what if I have to rely on this?
Right.
You know, because my dad hunted small animals. When we were a kid, we had a farm. We raised rabbits for food. I've seen my dad slaughter cattle, pigs, chickens, of course, you know. And then we have some friends that want to show us how to process your own deer. You know, there's a lot. So, you know, having a community, having people in your circle that have the knowledge to do the things that you don't know how to do, and that will make you more valuable in the long run, at least more knowledgeable, whether things go wrong or not.
Yeah, and in regards to community in relation to the book, it just dawned on me. So when things got bad, you had a choice to be part of the community or not be part of the community.
Mm-hmm.
But if you chose to not, you were either in or you were out.
Right.
There was no I'm out until I need help, then I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
You were in or you were out. Now there was these people that lived in the mountains. There were certain families. So if you choose to be out, you better be well prepared. I mean, you better have thought of every single thing. You better have every option. Otherwise, you better be in the community.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a better option. The people that were in the community, they got food rations eventually when they were able to do that from the community. The people that chose to be not part of it, they were 100% out until this other issue came along, right later on in the book,
Mm-hmm.
where they kind of needed each other. So that's something to think about. Everybody thinks the lone wolf thing. Well, I'll run off alone, this and that. Well, is that always the best way to be?
No, I agree. It's more about community, and like I said, if you're definitely a lone wolf, you better be like 100 acres, 100 miles from anybody, and you better
Like 50 people.
and better not need anybody. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, because you know a small cut can mean the life or death. You know, with infection and all that.
Yeah.
So you could be out in the woods all by yourself, no one around. You know, you're like, oh, cool, I'm kicking butt on this dystopian nightmare, and then you know, you fall down and you break your leg. Now what? You know, you sit there and rot, and somebody else gets all your stuff for free. So you know.
Yeah. And all these things happen in the book. It's just about everything you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
What do we forget? There's got to be some aspect of it where we forget.
I went over the Wikipedia, you know, cliff notes before this video to brush up on it, and you know, without giving away the story too much, you know, I think there's not much more we can really.
How about preserving the past?
Yeah.
Skills, people, equipment. and otherwise. Like, we've become such a disposable society.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily treat our old people very well sometimes. Well, they're a wealth of knowledge. They still probably, a lot of them worked on, they probably built the infrastructure in this country.
Right.
They're the only ones that know how to fix it.
Yeah. The book, the older people that survived, they were incredibly valuable. Like the guy with the plane and the guy that had all the VW bugs, the mechanics, and their knowledge, the military knowledge.
Yeah. What about a guy that lived in the woods and had a bunch of goofy old tractors?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of lessons to be learned. Well, I don't think GW Bulls is in here anymore. Did my link ever show up?
Yeah, it's in there. I see it.
Oh, there it was. We'll just leave it here. We'll hang in there for a couple more minutes. If there's anybody who wants to talk about the book specifically, go ahead and pop in. I think we've about covered everything without giving away too much.
Mhm.
So I gave my top 5. Did you give your top 5?
It was kind of an adaptation. Rich Dad Poor Dad. This book, Fahrenheit 451. That made a huge impact. I read that when I was like 16, 15.
Yeah, I was in junior high. I think it was a part of our junior high.
And there's a few things that stand out with that.
Fahrenheit 451, I think I should reread, because I think when I read it, I think I was too young to get it all.
Yeah.
Really.
I think if you read it now, it would blow your mind. I think you'd be like, you'll have to put the book down. I'm like, okay. This is the internet. This is the world. This is the mindset today, that they predicted this 100 years ago, or whenever the book was written. I know.
Yeah, that's an old one. That's what, Ray Bradbury, right?
Yeah. Now you got me curious when it was written. I want to say it was the 30s.
Yeah, that's pretty old.
After
World
War II, maybe. But I'm not sure.
I don't remember when 1984 was written. I'll Google that one.
Okay, it was Fahrenheit 451 was written in 1953, and then 1984
was written in 1949. Yeah, it says 1949.
Yeah.
And who wrote that one? I can't remember.
George Orwell.
George Orwell, yeah.
Which I've heard. And I haven't read it. I think I started to read, but Animal Farm. That's an impactful one. You can kind of relate it to a lot of the politics stuff.
Somebody had mentioned that earlier in the chat, and I think I missed it.
Yeah.
About
Fran did.
Okay. Oh, your boss is in here. Now you're in real trouble.
Uh-oh. Yeah, I mean, Jeff says Rich Dad Poor Dad is a must-read. He's an entrepreneur, so I mean, I bet you that book was a huge influence on Jeff's mindset of how he looks at things.
It's got to be. Like, I can't imagine being an entrepreneur without it.
Right. Well, there was a certain acquaintance that, I mentioned that book, and he had a raving rant about it for an hour. Of course, there was probably some alcohol involved, and it just how pointless the book was and all this stuff. And I'm just like, wow, you completely missed it. And then
how could you see that book as pointless?
But if I'm not going to say who it was, but if you know who I'm talking about, then you would. Oh, okay, I get that. But and then Dave Ramsey. What's the book that?
The Money Makeover.
Yeah,
Total
the
Money
Total Money Makeover. That kind of that was definitely a huge influence with my wife, and so I haven't read it, but I didn't need to because she was implementing all of that. Still does. So, but I mean, and
No,
then
I don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I think there's a couple other like self-help books that I read that kind of made an impact. But I won't get into those. So, but
Have you? And this is kind of sort of down the same path, similar path.
mhm.
I don't know what your interests are, but have you read or listened to the Left Behind series at all?
No,
Okay, that's another eye-opening thing, but kind of on a different topic. But I like that one too.
okay. Is it? Oh wow, it's like a whole bunch.
I think it's 13 books.
13 books. I don't have that kind of time.
Well, you'll have to listen to it while you're dispatching.
16 best-selling religious novels. Wow.
Oh, 16. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think
Did they make a movie on that?
yeah, but the movie's. I mean, it was a decent movie, but it was nothing even close to the books. I was very disappointed in the movie. The story didn't even kind of. I mean, some of the characters didn't even follow nearly the same path as they did in the books. I mean, one of them lived that was supposed to die, for crying out loud. How could you? I mean, how could you make a movie that doesn't even follow the book?
Oh, they did that with that Will Smith movie, I Am Legend.
Yeah.
I mean, the only there was like 3 similarities of the movie versus the original story, and the ending's completely different. I mean, it's like, why did you even name this I Am Legend, other than to try to get the old fogies like us to go, hey, this might be a cool movie.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Well, I'm reading the Wikipedia on Left Behind. I dig it.
I mean,
I'm picking up what you're saying.
it's not everybody's interested in that, but it's kind of like this. Not everybody's interested in 1 Second After. But even if you take away that part of it, the story is freaking great.
Yeah. Even if you think that the scenario 1 Second After could never happen, which, hell, ask the people in Texas during the polar vortex if it could happen. Or ask anybody who's ever been through a hurricane if that can happen. But anyways, the story in and of itself is great.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Well, I think we covered pretty much everything we wanted to cover here today. First time ever doing something like this. How about you?
Yeah, no, I've been talking to my friend Greg. He's like, oh man, I can't wait till you guys do it, because he wanted to put his 2 cents in, and he must be asleep or driving where he can't join in, because I know he wanted to join in on this conversation, because he's another one that, like, I think that book had a major impact on him, and I appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, we should probably do this again.
We do more of this. I mean, maybe do like a YouTuber book club thing where we pick a book and we'll go to read it. But if you time it just right, we can read the 3rd one of the series at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I appreciate you having me on. This has been fun. It definitely, hopefully, the replay gets people thinking. And
Yeah, because when you're driving down the road, I mean, sometimes you live, eat, and breathe this whole trucking thing. I'm thinking driving down the road, listening to something else might be a welcome break every now and then, especially on a weekend when things are quiet.
Yeah, I mean, that was my audio. Like, I had to go rescue a trailer in Texas not too long ago, and it was over a weekend, so I was like, nobody was on the phone, so I was like, man, I'll just catch up on some of my Audible stuff that I had. And
yeah,
and you can't listen to self-help books or political books or nonfiction books all the time. You got to have some break from that. And
yeah,
this
you'll
was
burn
the
out.
perfect combination, because it's realistic, but it's not. I like fantasy books too. I was a big fan of the Dragonlance stuff back when I was a kid, but it was nice to read something that didn't have an agenda other than awareness.
Yeah.
And you know, you walk into Barnes and Noble and it's just everybody screaming at you. But
with both feet, you got a lot of wind noise. You got your window down, or you're blowing your mic in the wind in your mic. I'll bring you on here. Unmute you.
he's frozen.
Oh, now I'm frozen.
Am I there?
There you go. There you go.
Kind of there.
Yeah. So, guys, just real quick, anybody in the chat, we'll do this if people want to listen. Somebody's just got to participate. If y'all listen, I think we're more inclined to do it. Number one. Number two, if you haven't checked out Snorelord's channel, definitely go over there and subscribe. Number three, if you are interested or would participate, or hey, we could throw out a book, say, okay, in a month we'll do a review on this book. Everybody could read it, and then we can, if more people want to join the discussion, that's a pretty cool thing. That might be something cool to do.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to do this again or be a part of it, or here, make it a regular thing, drop a comment, leave a thumbs up, something. What's up with you today with both feet?
All right. I just got done dropping off some dead bodies. Had a whole overload for the weekend.
Oh man, you are a robot.
All right.
Yeah, this isn't gonna work, man. I'm sorry. Come back later.
Bad signal.
Yeah, so
Running Ace says monthly book review would be fantastic.
all right.
And let me put my let me comment with my old channel.
Okay.
With my other channel, it's smaller, but it's actually my older channel. That's the channel I kind of talk about stuff a little bit beyond the trucking, which is probably why that channel's having trouble growing. The YouTube algorithms and all that. Let's see. Put that link in there, and
I'm not really into fantasy though, books as far as that goes, but about anything else.
I didn't read the Lord of the Rings, but I appreciate the Lord of the Rings movies, which I've heard everybody says it's pretty decent with the books. But beyond that, I'm not. I tried. There was a post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear war / it was like Lord of the Rings meets Mad Max. And it was one of those cheap audiobooks in the truck stop. And I'm like, well, this ought to be awesome, man. I got like halfway through 5 chapters, and I was like, eh.
It was in the bargain bin for a reason, huh?
Yep. So, but there's my old channel. I started doing YouTube back in 2009, 2010. And then it was anything and everything, music, doing driving the music videos. And then I decided when I went to Landstar, I was going to do a separate talking head video or channel about that. And then that's the one that actually grew. Whereas the other one, I put on the shelf for a while and it collected dust. And I've recently resurrected it. And that's where I talk about some of the more, I don't know, non-trucking, some of the health stuff, some of the conspiracy stuff that I have, or not conspiracy, more theories of.
Yes. Is anything a conspiracy anymore? Every time you talk about something be a conspiracy theory, the next week you find out it's damn true, isn't it?
Right. And so, but my main channel, it kind of, I lost 100 pounds and I've talked about the CPAP stuff. I've talked about, it's not just rates. I've talked about health a little bit. I've talked about how you can lose weight as a truck driver. And then just the morning coffee, man. It's just kind of a morning chat. While everybody's like trying to crunch numbers and doom and gloom, I'm more about mindset and keeping calm and having a plan. And I try to keep my ego at bay. Sometimes I fail at that. I try to be humble. I try, I just want to help people out, because the better we can make this world, you improve yourself, you improve the world, right? So
Yeah, I think that comes through.
Yeah, and I don't have all the answers, but
Well, just make something up like everybody else.
but I really appreciate you bringing me on. I'm glad we did
Yeah.
this on your channel, and
Yeah, we got to get your channel bigger.
yeah,
It deserves to be. You know, some of the best YouTube channels are just small ones, man.
well, thank you. You've got a good operation going on over there, and
Well, thank you.
You know, so
Okay.
anyways, man, thanks for having me on, and we definitely need to do this again.
Yeah, stick around here for a second, okay?
All right.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming in, and we'll do it next time. Have a great day.